All right. Welcome back. Happy Friday.
Friday.
Friday. Let's jump right in. What do you say?
Yeah, and I mean, we got a doozy for you.
Doozy, the Leper King.
Yeah, Leper King.
Not to be confused with the Lion King. That was awful. I'm so sorry. Where did
You're
I
right.
get that from?
You're right. Not to be confused. I don't think anybody's confused about that, but sure.
So sorry.
Okay. All right, let's go.
Okay. Welcome, Cadaver Crew.
Get your dark little minds right and settle in.
Class is in session, and the cadaver is already on the table.
I'm B.
And I'm Sam.
And this is the Cadaver's Files.
We went 4 for 4 today.
Whoop, whoop.
Okay, let's go.
All right, so many of you guys may have seen Leprosy.
The Lion King.
Not the Lion King. I mean, you may have seen the Lion King as well, but there's not leprosy in the Lion King as far as I know. Could be.
Now we should go back and watch it.
I guess, except for it's sad, so I don't know if I want to. But you may have seen leprosy in a few other films, namely the big one that I'm going to talk about is the 2005 movie Kingdom of Heaven.
Never heard of it.
So it had like Orlando Bloom and Liam Nielsen and like a lot of famous people in it.
Okay.
It's about the Crusades. Specifically, there's one character in it that we're going to talk about today. So,
and it's not the king from House of the Dragon.
No, it's not, because that is not a real person. But this is a real person, King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, also known as the Leper King.
Okay.
And in the movies, Baldwin IV is portrayed to have like a silver mask to hide his deformities caused by leprosy. And he wears it's like a white crusader uniform that goes all the way, like a hood that goes all the way around. And then he has this mask on and gloves, and like there's no part of his skin that's showing. And actually, it's so interesting that in the movie they chose to go this route because this is not factual at all. He didn't give a shit.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I'm glad.
There's no mention of such a thing in medieval texts. And in fact, there are multiple descriptions of him not wearing a mask and people being uncomfortable with his disfigurements.
I'll leave it to Hollywood to really change things up.
Yeah. So if you Google King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem, the pictures you're going to see are of a guy wearing this mask. That is not accurate.
Okay.
So
note it.
Just interesting because when I thought of him, I thought of this movie and I immediately was like, oh, it's a guy that wears this mask because he has leprosy because his face was deformed so badly.
Yeah.
But no, not historically accurate.
Okay. Note it.
So it's just a fun fact to start the episode.
Absolutely.
So Baldwin IV lived from 1161 to 1185.
Okay.
But he was only king from 1174 until his death at 24 years old.
Wow, he died young. Did he die from leprosy?
He died from a fever, essentially, like infection.
Okay.
He got sick a lot. Like he had malaria and then he had this. So like he was sick a lot also, but the leprosy definitely was not helping.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he also suffered physically a lot from leprosy. He couldn't get around anymore in his 20s.
Yeah.
He ascended the throne when he was only 13.
Way too young.
Even though he had leprosy.
Wow.
Yeah. So how did that even happen? Well, let me tell you, it's some real Game of Thrones shit.
Oh, I can't wait. Let's go.
So at this time, the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the other Crusader principalities were ruled by the Franks, or French-speaking Catholics.
Okay.
And Jerusalem is located in the Middle East. Right. So the area was surrounded by Arab Muslim states at the time. So there was like this pocket of French Catholics.
Yeah.
In a sea of Arab Muslim states because they wanted to own Jerusalem.
Of course.
It's the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baldwin's parents were both born in the Crusader states. And after Baldwin III died childless, who was the king at the time, Baldwin IV's father, Amalric, not Baldwin. Interesting that he did not get the title Baldwin, but he was never actually supposed to become king because Baldwin III was supposed to have a son. So Baldwin IV's father ascended the throne. However, the nobles in the kingdom were opposed to his wife, Agnes, and Baldwin IV's mother. They were like, we don't like her, of course. Historians suggest that this is because they were threatened by the prospect of her increased influence.
Yeah.
Like she was super popular. And she was also from a Crusader state. And so they would have been like this power couple.
Yeah.
So people were like,
but isn't that what you want?
Yes, you would.
Yeah.
Generally. But I think they were just threatened by her as a woman.
Yeah.
So they were forced to annul their marriage, yes, on the grounds of consanguinity, having kinship with a relative from a common ancestor.
People were doing this all the
I
time.
know.
Why are
I'm
we making
like-
them get divorced?
I was like, this is royalty.
Yeah.
We've been doing that.
And we will continue to do that.
Yeah, this is only the 1100s. We're going to keep doing that for sure. And now it's a problem? Okay. But Amalric was successful in having his children, both Baldwin and his sister Sybil, declared legitimate despite the annulment. So despite he can't be married to his wife anymore, his children were called legitimate.
Yeah.
And so that allows Baldwin to be next up for the throne.
Baldwin IV.
Baldwin IV.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with the other three.
Yes.
Yes. Or the other one we're going to talk about later. So Baldwin essentially grew up without a mother. She remarried because you can't be a woman by yourself.
Yeah.
You can't be unmarried, and rarely saw his sister, who was raised in the convent of St. Lazarus. So he was kind of just alone with his father as king, right? When Baldwin was 9, he was sent to live with William of Tyre in order to receive an education. William of Tyre is kind of a clerk who would host a lot of noble children and teach them mathematics, science, politics, whatever.
Yeah.
Combat, all that kind of stuff. So he was living, and it's always a live-in situation. So he was living with William of Tyre, and most of the information we get about Baldwin IV and his disease comes from him.
Okay.
So during this time, William noticed that when playing with other noble children, Baldwin did not cry when pinched by his peers, and found out that Baldwin could not feel pain in his right arm.
First signs.
Mm-hmm. So this is when he's about 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the king hired Arab physician Abu Salimad Dawood to treat Baldwin. He also hired a relative of Abu in order to teach Baldwin horse riding. So he hired one to be a physician and then a relative to teach him horse riding because he didn't have sensation in one of his hands. He had to learn how to control his horse solely by using his knees.
Oh, yeah.
And so they needed a specific type of riding instructor in order to teach him that. That's why the king brought this essentially family business in to treat him and to teach him how to ride and handle his upcoming hardships physically.
Yeah.
Yeah. So physicians did not want to diagnose him with leprosy due to the stigma of the diagnosis, because they thought maybe it could turn very badly for him and then they wouldn't have an heir to the throne.
Yeah.
And so he also may have been required by law to enter the Order of St. Lazarus, which is a military order composed of affected knights or sergeants. So if you were affected by a disease or something like that, they would send you into this military order
to die.
Yeah, you could also so surgeons are basically contracted workers, so you could do other work too, but it is a military order.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, go over there.
Yeah.
Like, send him over there. So they were afraid that if they diagnosed him, he would have to go.
Yeah.
As an adolescent, Baldwin was described as precocious, determined, optimistic, despite his illness. He was a quick learner, but he did stutter a little bit. His memory was excellent, and he never forgot the kindness or slights done to him by others. He had this crazy good memory.
Interesting.
By 1169, Amalric was hoping to marry Sybil, and I say Sybil because it's spelled there's 3 different spellings. It could be Sibylla or Sibylle or Sybil.
Okay.
So I'm saying Sybil.
Fair.
Okay. So that her husband could rule until Baldwin was old enough to rule as regent. So he was hoping to marry off his teenage daughter with an adult male so that he could rule as regent until Baldwin came of age and could become king.
Yeah. Let's just marry off our daughters. Yep.
But the match that he was hoping to secure fell through, and in 1174, Amalric died of dysentery.
Oregon Trail shit.
Oregon Trail shit, yeah. The High Court literally felt they had no other option but to crown Baldwin IV.
Yeah, Baldwin III didn't give you some offspring. Then you finally got this guy in. Then the marriage didn't work. At some point, somebody's got to rule.
Though female ascension was allowed, so it was allowed to pass on to a female, they would generally have to be married for them to go for that. Especially when you have a male, they were like, she's not married. His sister's not married, even though she's older. There was no other suitable male candidates. There were 3 other male candidates throughout the family line, but a lot of them had been deemed as
Unworthy.
insufficient, like had been on long war campaigns and were in opposite countries, or, they just didn't see that as a viable option. So they thought their best hope was to crown Baldwin IV, even though they knew of his illness.
Yeah. And the fact that he's how old?
Well, he's 13.
Yeah.
So naturally, when a child is crowned king, the adults fly to secure some type of power, including his own mother, who came back around.
Of course. Okay, we don't like her anymore.
So some historians accuse her of exploiting her son's condition for self-gain. Usually, if they would have remained married, a mother would be regent until the son comes of age.
Yeah.
So that would be the case, but they are not married anymore. And she's actually been through 2 other husbands. So
yeah, and she wasn't a part of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So since their marriage was annulled, she no longer had the right to the throne or to be regent. So essentially another guy that was in the government became regent for a couple years, because you only have to turn 15 to be considered an adult. So
wow, think about your child's brain at 15.
Not good. Not good. I guess Baldwin IV was an exceptional 15-year-old, though.
Aren't they all?
Later, during his regency, it was confirmed that Baldwin IV had leprosy, though it's not clear who he contracted it from. Most likely someone he was around a lot at a young age who did not exhibit visible symptoms.
Yeah.
So,
and he didn't exhibit visible symptoms for a while. Like somebody just noticed he didn't cry when other kids pinched him.
Yeah. Could have just been a tough kid.
Yeah.
He did have the redness.
Oh, man.
Eventually, too. It's depicted in a few pictures, like drawings and such, and paintings. So most likely it could have been from like a servant or a wet nurse.
Yeah.
Someone that was with him a lot in that time, like early infant childhood stage. And probably either they weren't necessarily aware or they were able to hide it. Because, you had to hide it if you wanted to remain in society. So,
yeah.
They probably hid it and nobody could tell. Because if you can hide that your arm, you don't have feeling in your arm, you can still move your arm, you just can't feel things. And so if they were able to hide that, then it's possible that he was just around that person.
I agree.
So puberty also may have accelerated the illness, and his condition from then on worsened rapidly.
Poor guy.
So most severely affected were his extremities, his hands and feet, and then his face was really, really impacted. So as soon as he turned 15 and he no longer needed a regent, he began planning a full-scale attack on Egypt. He jumped right into war.
He had been planning this.
Yeah, he was ready. So there was this threat from a Muslim leader of the surrounding areas called Saladin, who was consolidating power and threatening the Crusader states. So there's this external threat, and he was really into, I'm going to go knock it down. This guy's done for. I don't want to worry about this for the rest of my rule, right? So he really did crush it.
Did he?
Yeah. He was a really good commander. He had a really good way with war planning and strategy and things like that. And in the Battle of Montejasard in 1177, way back when, one of Baldwin's most famous achievements was his victory against Saladin, being extremely outnumbered.
Yeah.
So he was able to maneuver and flank his forces and essentially deliver a crushing defeat in that sense. So he also took part in the fighting despite his loss of sensation in his hand.
I cannot believe someone let him do that, because he wouldn't know when he had been wounded on the battlefield.
Throughout his whole reign, he was on the battlefield.
Wow. So much respect for that.
Yeah. He was successful in multiple campaigns throughout his reign and showed remarkable strategic skill even though his health deteriorated. It was like his mind was still very powerful, even though
it doesn't affect the central nervous system.
Exactly. So his brain and his planning and his strategy was very, very good, even though he physically couldn't always bring it all together. But
yeah.
Sybil finally married, but only a year later, her husband became sick and died, leaving her pregnant. And Baldwin, without a way to give up the throne, because his goal was always to give up the throne to somebody else that wasn't so ill. And so he was always looking for
an out.
So he originally thought that Sybil's husband, his name was William, he was going to give him the throne. And either William was like, no, I don't want it, and really wouldn't have mattered because he died a year later anyway.
Yeah.
But he wasn't able to give it to him. So there's a lot of things up in the air. He also became ill with malaria at this time, so he had to fight that off. And he was usually, when he was ill like that, he had to stay in one place. He couldn't come back. So they were in a different part, not in the city of Jerusalem. Then he had to travel back, and it was a lot on his body. go back and forth. Baldwin defended Jerusalem against attacks and infighting. During his short reign, there was a lot of infighting, a lot of people grabbing for power that he had to kind of maneuver and strategize against.
I mean, let's be honest. They see someone that's weak, that has leprosy, and that doesn't have an heir to the throne.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. So, like I said, very Game of Thrones shit. So, Sybil did end up having a son, also called Baldwin.
Is Sybil his sister?
Yes.
Okay. Just confirming. I thought so, but just confirming.
Yes. So that is Baldwin V. And Baldwin IV hoped that he could take the throne and create a peaceful transition of power.
Yeah.
So she also remarried this dude named Guy. Yeah, Lusignan, who was incredibly insubordinate to Baldwin and not trustworthy to become regent, even for the young Baldwin V.
So this guy's got to stick it out.
Yeah. So he's trying to survive until Baldwin V can take over.
Yeah.
As
15 years.
Yeah. As time went on, Baldwin's leprosy got way worse. By his 20s, the disease had advanced significantly. He had difficulty walking. He could no longer blink on his own, so his corneas dried out, and he became blind as well. Even during these times, he was determined to continue to make strategic decisions and be part of ruling. He would even have himself carried to battlefields in a litter to be present.
I support that so much.
I mean,
you're trying to do what's best for your country. You know that if this guy, literal name, guy, has anything to do with it,
it's going to be bad.
It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
Wow. That's some badass shit.
Yeah. He was pretty known as being like a benevolent and also like quick-witted, like very strong ruler. If he wouldn't have had leprosy, he probably would have taken Jerusalem a lot farther. And he really prevented the fall of Jerusalem as far as the Crusades and the rule of the French Catholics. Like, he held on to Jerusalem longer than it should have been held on to. Like, if it wasn't for him, it would have fallen a lot sooner.
Yeah.
So he kept it together.
Yeah.
Somehow, though, through all of this, Baldwin defeated the stigma of leprosy during this time. Leprosy was feared and associated with sin and divine judgment. However, he maintained his rule and most likely helped destigmatize leprosy.
For a short period of time.
Baldwin IV never married, never had children. Most likely he was really concerned about transmitting leprosy to an heir. So he chose to crown his nephew in 1183, Baldwin V, as co-king in an attempt to secure succession and prevent power struggles. So he brings him on. He's like, hopefully we'll do this together. He's 7, by the way. So
we're definitely doing this together.
Yeah.
AKA I'm doing everything.
Yeah. Baldwin died in 1185 and his nephew did succeed him, but his nephew only lived till 1186, dying at 9 years old of unknown causes.
Okay, so like, was he murdered?
Some people believed he may have been poisoned.
Yeah, there's no way.
And 9?
This family doesn't have this bad of luck.
Right? This led to even more instability and eventually the loss of Jerusalem to Saladin in the Battle of Hattin in 1187.
Wow, so they lost it quick.
Right after he died and his nephew was murdered / died of unknown causes.
Murdered.
Yeah. So, yeah, he really was the driving force keeping everybody safe within Jerusalem. You know, I mean, I know that they took it the first time, but like, he was that. So he's considered one of the most extraordinary monarchs of the Crusades.
Wow.
And he had leprosy. And he died at 24. So he did a lot in very little time.
Obviously, I'm trusting everything that you're giving out and you're painting him in a very positive light.
Yeah, I mean, you can't know for sure, but based on the writings of William of Tyre and some of the other portrayals, he was considered a very strong monarch that kept it all together and kept people safe and really cared.
It's always the people that don't want the throne that do the best with the throne.
And like I said, he did try to give it up multiple times.
Yeah. It sucks that his plan didn't work.
I know. So that's it.
That's it. That was a good case file.
The IV of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
The Leper King.
The Leper King. I've heard of the Leper King, but I'd never once looked into it. Couldn't have told you anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thanks guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed that one.
That was a good case file. I hope they did. Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, you can support us. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. You can find the links for everything in our show notes.
Hit that link tree up.
Yeah, in any of our bios, you can see our link tree, which has everything that you could need in it. It'll continue to grow, so keep going back and looking at it. It'll be our one-stop shop for all the things.
Yep.
Yeah. You can listen anywhere you get your podcast.
Yeah.
What a fun
Listen
thing
up.
to say.
Eat it up.
Eat it up. And then continue to listen, review, share our podcast, interaction with like our social media and our podcast and all those things. It's really what drives us the most, and gets us more views and gets our story and everything out there. So that's definitely what helps.
Yeah. If you have an idea for an episode or a case, go ahead and DM us on social media. If you want to share a story with us that we could possibly share on the pod, also DM us that and hopefully we can get that put together.
Yeah.
So sneak peek of next episode is we don't know.
We don't know. No, we're going on vacation.
We are still thinking about it. So
rabies? Rabies could be good. We got time.
Just kidding. Right now, newsflash, rabies is next.
Cool. We'll do rabies next.
All right.
On that note, class is dismissed.
Stay safe.
Stay curious.
And don't try this at home.
Unless you own a bone saw.
Bye.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. We discuss the history of medicine, not your personal medical situation. Nothing you hear on this show should ever be taken as medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Some of the information discussed may be incorrect or become outdated over time. We do our best to stay current with medical knowledge, but medicine changes quickly. Additionally, because we do not work in every specific field we discuss, there may be times when we misspeak or misinterpret information. We're all human and we're doing our best for the podcast. Every medical case is unique, and your health decisions should always be made in consultation with your own qualified healthcare professional. If you have any questions or concerns about your health, please reach out to a licensed provider who can give you guidance based on your individual needs.